What's up, my freedom-loving friend? Today we're going to talk about the White House and big tech colluding to censor you and I. Now, I got my boots on, my American flag shorts on, because we're talking about the First Amendment. I think the most important right we have, to even say it's a right we have, sounds disempowering. It's like, dude, it shouldn't be a right that's granted to us. It's just a right that should flourish from us. But nonetheless, what isn't new, what you and I already know, is the White House has been infringing on our First Amendment for a couple years now. It's disgusting. And they've been doing their best to fly under the cover, so it looks like they're not. And we've seen all this censorship happening with big tech. Now we know, I believe about a year ago, Jen Psaki, beloved former White House press secretary, sorry to see her go. She had said that the White House had been instructing Facebook on what posts to censor. They were flagging posts for Facebook. Now we have a New York Post report we'll go through here in a second that has much more uncovered about the White House colluding with big tech to censor us. Here's the deal. There's a distinction between a company moderating their platform, basically censoring on their platform, and a huge difference between the White House censoring speech. Because we have what's called the First Amendment. The government is not allowed to infringe on our free speech. A private company basically can, because when you enter their domain, they have their rules. It's like, cool, you play by their rules or don't go into their domain. I'm pretty much on board with that. It's like if you came into my house, you can't just say what you want. Like you can't look at my wife and start demeaning her, because if you do, I'm going to tell you, get the hell out of my house. So private companies, tech companies, they can inherently do that. But the big problem becomes when the White House is telling them what to censor their users on, because then that is the government basically weaponizing big tech as their arm of censorship. That is a complete violation of our First Amendment. And now we have the New York Post coming out with, maybe we could call it smoking gun evidence, email trails that show, yes, the White House has been colluding with big tech to censor our free speech, which is a big freaking problem. So let's get into it. The article, White House big tech colluded to censor misinformation lawsuit, and starts off, the Biden administration worked in tandem with social media giants like Facebook and Twitter to censor statements they deemed misinformation about topics including the COVID-19 pandemic, two Republican state attorney generals said Thursday, as they push for the release of emails between top executive branch officials and big tech titans. In a petition filed Wednesday in Louisiana federal court, State Attorney General Jeff Landry and his Missouri counterpart Jeff Schmidt, so he's Attorney General of Missouri, charged that dozens of federal officials across at least 11 federal agencies engaged in a massive, sprawling federal censorship enterprise with the intent, monkeypox, and effect of pressuring social media platforms to censor and suppress private speech that federal officials disfavor. Cool, bunch of words. Let's get into it. Article talks about White House flagging posts for censorship. Oh, this is worth noting because it's hilarious. The day after Psaki told the media, like, yeah, we've been flagging posts for Facebook, what of it? The following day, Biden, 81 million votes, by the way, Biden accused platforms like Facebook of killing people by allowing so-called misinformation to propagate unchecked. That's hilarious. Nobody's actually ever died from misinformation. Maybe you've seen, I did a video on it on my main channel about how now unknown cause of death is the leading cause of death in Alberta, Canada. I wonder what the cause is. It'd be funny if they just start treating us like we're dumber than they already treat us. And they're like, misinformation is the leading cause of death. Swap out that unknown cause of death. That looks suspicious, like we're trying to hide something. Misinformation is the leading cause of death now. So now we get to the the email evidence. Because speculate, we know White House is colluding with big tech. We know. But there needs to be evidence. So getting into that. Shortly after Biden's comments, an email from an unidentified Facebook official to Surgeon General Vivek Murthy read, in part, "I know our teams met today to better understand the scope of what the White House expects from us on misinformation going forward." So that's email evidence acknowledging, okay, White House, we know you have expectations of us censoring what you call misinformation. By the way, censoring misinformation, freedom of speech grants you and I, all American citizens, the right to free speech. It's not the right to accurate speech. It's right to free speech. As long as you're not inciting violence or panic, you can say whatever the hell you want. It can be so inaccurate. It can be truthful. And P.S., there should be no ministry of truth determining for you and I what is truthful. That's why the First Amendment is beautiful. Say what you want. Be an idiot, be wrong, be wise, be right. Nobody's good, or some of each. Nobody's ever right all the time, but we have the right to not be right. Back at it. 7 days after that email, on July 23rd, the same Facebook official proudly informed officials at the Department of Health and Human Services that the company was taking action against a group dubbed Disinformation Dozen for their posts about jabs. So Facebook official was letting the federal government, Department of Health and Human Services, know, yeah, we're kicking them off. The email said, "We removed 17 additional pages, groups, and Instagram accounts tied to the Disinfo Dozen." The email read, later adding, "We also expanded the group of false claims that we removed to keep up with recent trends of misinformation that we are seeing." It goes on to say, "The relationship was so cozy that on July 20th, 2021, White House response team digital director Clark Humphrey received a response from Facebook in seconds when he asked about getting a fake Dr. Anthony Fauci Instagram account taken down." And yet another email says, this one from April 2021, it shows a scheduled meeting for White House staffers to be, quote, briefed by Twitter on misinfo. And still another record from July 28th of that year shows a Facebook official proposing to a CDC counterpart that, in addition to our weekly meetings, email chains showing hey, federal government, CDC branch, we have weekly meetings. It's called evidence. In addition to our weekly meetings, doing a monthly misinfo debunking meeting with maybe claim topics communicated a few days prior so that you can bring in the matching experts and chat casually for 30 minutes or so. Strong evidence of them saying, bring in experts that you want us to propagate their narrative, wrong or right, from which we will then censor everybody who's not in alignment with that narrative. CDC official answered, yes, we would love to do that. Thank you for the email chain. Wonder if Hillary Clinton's like, guys, I can help you. I know how to get rid of emails. Hillary's on it. So Eric Schmidt, the Missouri Attorney General, goes on in the article. He says, "We have already received a number of documents that clearly prove that the federal government has an incestuous relationship with social media companies and clearly coordinate to censor freedom of speech. But we're not done," Schmidt said in a statement. And this last piece of the article before we move on, I think is pretty important because it's got some beef to it. The attorney generals from Louisiana, Missouri, say they have identified at least 45 people within HHS and the Department of Homeland Security alone who communicated with social media companies about misinformation. Federal government, not allowed to censor any kind of speech. Communicating with quote-unquote private enterprises who are allowed. Private enterprises being used by the federal government to censor you and I. Goes on, they also claim that officials at other agencies, including the Census Bureau, Food and Drug Administration, the FBI, no. The State Department and the Treasury Department were at least aware of the censorship enterprise. Concluding, in addition to the document dump, Meta, Facebook's new parent company, has disclosed that at least 32 officials, including workers at the FDA U.S. Election Assistance Commission, yikes, and the White House have communicated with the company about content moderation, delicate way of saying censorship. In addition, YouTube disclosed contacts with 11 officials, some of which weren't shared by the government in response to the lawsuit. Interesting. Now, the plot thickens a little bit. Now the question is, cool, this is great evidence. I'm not a lawyer, but I identify as a lawyer, so I'm a lawyer. This for me is very compelling. How will it hold up in court? Yet to be seen. Will it have an effect of getting our government to back off infringing on our First Amendment? I certainly hope so, but that answer remains to be seen. Now, getting to some answers that have been seen. You may have heard about Alex Berenson. He's a former New York Times reporter. He was banned last year on Twitter for propagating misinformation about COVID and the one true treatment of COVID. So his account was permanently banned. Now, he just got reinstated by Twitter because he sued the crap out of them. And now he plans to sue the crap out of the White House. First, let's just take a look at his lawsuit against Twitter, how and why he got reinstated, because that's unheard of. This is a new precedent. Someone who is banned off Twitter got reinstated. Down here on the Fox News website, it says, to recap, last August, Twitter banned me after I got 5 strikes under its misinformation policy, which meant I supposedly made claims of fact that were demonstrably false or misleading and likely to impact public safety or cause serious harm. Misinformation deaths. Now we come to find out those tweets should not have led to my suspension. So everything he tweeted allegedly has been proven to be true. Shocker. What Twitter banned him for, his misinformation, has now been demonstrably proven to be true. Now, he's planning to sue the White House. Why? Over here, still on Fox News, Alex Berenson, I plan to sue the White House over Twitter ban. Why? Here, we see former New York Times reporter Alex Berenson says he plans to sue the White House and several other Biden administration officials who allegedly had a role in pressuring Twitter to ban his account. So this guy is suing the White House because allegedly he has proof that the White House was instructing Twitter on what to censor and what led to Alex's ban. That's a big problem, as we've already displayed. The federal government not allowed to censor our speech, not allowed to instruct other people to censor our speech because that's still them taking away our First Amendment. It just so happens that Alex Berenson's his tweets have been now demonstrated to not have been false misinformation, but they've been proven to be true. Even if they were super duper false, stupid stuff, so inaccurate, White House still not allowed to censor him. Now it turns out the plot thickens because they were censoring him from speaking truth. Do you trust the thought police yet? Me either. So concluding this, here's a part of me that's optimistic. Alex Berenson unprecedentedly had his Twitter account reinstated via a lawsuit, and now he's filing a lawsuit against the White House for state-sponsored censorship. I'm optimistic about this. Anything can happen, but I'm optimistic because he already won the lawsuit against Twitter. So his lawsuit against the White House, I hope it does well. I think there's cause to believe it can do well. Now, what's the outcome of the lawsuit? That I have no idea. Like if the White House is found guilty, like, yes, in a court of law, you've been proven to be instructing Twitter what to censor against U.S. citizens. You're guilty. Well, then what? I don't know, like White House officials are not going to jail. I highly doubt that. Would the best outcome of the lawsuit get all this exposed and the White House has to be accountable for state-sponsored censorship? Do they have to publicly apologize? Do they have to publicly reveal, here's how we've been doing it all? Will you and I see a difference in our big tech social media experiences after this lawsuit if it comes out with an ideal outcome? I don't know. What comes of it? Yet to be seen. But I do think this is important because we, the people, we have to stand up against the tyrants that, quite honestly, are just trying to take away our rights. That's one of the reasons, shameless plug coming up, I designed this latest piece of my merch, Defund the Thought Police. Why? Because it funds your and I's own critical thinking. I think the last thing we ever want to do is outsource our thinking to anyone else. And if we outsource what we are allowed and not allowed to say, we are truly outsourcing our thinking because our words are an extension of our thoughts. If we have to start censoring our speech, then we're actually censoring our thinking. And when we're censoring our thinking, we don't have sovereignty over the miracle that is our own being. That's something that should always be in our power, not the power of anyone else. So if you're into defunding the thought police by funding your own critical thinking and discernment while abiding by your first constitutional right to do so, You can check out the latest design only at awakenwithjp.com. But for now, let me know what you think about this collusion between the White House and big tech, what the New York Post is now revealing with its email chains by the attorney generals from Louisiana and Missouri. Let me know what you think about Alex Berenson's lawsuit against Twitter and now his upcoming lawsuit against the White House. What do you think is going to happen? I've asked you to share a lot in the comments. So no obligation to write a book, but I would love to hear and see what's at the top of your mind. What do you think is going to happen? And most of all, here's just one other chapter to write in the comments. What do you think the solution is to the infringement on our First Amendment rights? Let me know in the comments. But for now, my freedom-loving family, I appreciate you. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for paying attention to what the tyrants are doing, because just like how a wise man once said, you can't get out of a jail you don't know you're in. You can't get out of an erosion of freedoms unless you see that it's happening. So being awake and aware is a powerful process, and I appreciate you being someone who's dedicated to being awake and aware, because Team Humanity needs you. Stay free, my friend.